He's Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor. It is Braves Today. BravesToday.com is where you can find us. Lindsay, 100 wins. I think that was one of those things where we kind of saw that coming based on the trajectory that everybody was headed, but still, it feels good to hit that century mark.
Yeah, it's the first time Atlanta's had consecutive 100 win seasons since 2002, 2003. So that's nice. But the thing that's a little bit odd, and one of our writers put this on the site on Monday morning, was what some of the previous Atlanta Braves teams who have won 100 games, what they went on to do. And it's winning 100 games is great. You get home field advantage and all of that. It's not a guarantee you're going to win the World Series. And so this is be happy that we got ourselves into the postseason tournament, but understand we got to focus on winning in the postseason. It's not a guarantee here.
With that said, success lineup seems to be okay. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some additions that get brought up, but that will be more for support roles more than anything else. Not going to be really making an impact. The bad part is if we got to if the Braves rely on them to basically correct wrongs, that means they're probably behind the 8 ball already, or they're way ahead and they're just trying to give somebody some rest to head into somewhere else. But excluding production of the catchers, everything seems to be okay lineup wise right now.
Yeah, I mean, everybody for the most part is healthy on the position player front and is hitting, with the exception, like you said, of the catchers. And that's still something where I think Sean Murphy, when he gets, multiple starts in a row, he'll start to come around. But the big question I'm going to have is really going to be, what is the roster going to do as far as those bench spots? You go from 28 roster spots in August or in September, you're down back to 26 in the postseason. I wrote a thing just Monday morning about, does Vaughn Grissom make the postseason roster? Because, you're going to have to, you have 14 right now, you have to cut down to 13. Does he take somebody's job when you, in essence, take one person off the roster? Do you then swap him in or not? That's really where you are on position players. Like you're asking about that 13th guy on the bench. Pitching, a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, pitching that's been my biggest concern. When I saw this thing, I followed this thing on social media. I think it's called NL East something another, and it's everybody's in there that's in the NL. I mean, there's Met fans in there, there's Philly fans that are in. I mean, it's everybody in the NL East, and I think there's other fans in there. I've seen where people from Chicago have been posting stuff in there, and I'm like, you guys are just trolling. I mean, there's no reason for you to follow this, but they made up a good point. They said, is this at the point where Atlanta now has an excuse for no success that they can blame their pitching? I don't know that it's an excuse right now. You and I have been touching on the pitching issues dating all the way back to the first half of the season because we didn't know about Wright. We didn't know the severity of Fried. We didn't know if Elder was going to be Elder the way he's been the entire season. I think that the pitching has been a question mark all year. It's been those bats that we've depended on. Strider, fine. Elder, surprised. And Morton, he's been there, been solid, but now we don't see him till it's almost like we got to make a World Series to see him jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's used 16 starters this year, and that is unusual. The average team uses somewhere between 10 and 11 different starters over the course of a season, and obviously Atlanta had 3 guys take 30 starts in Strider, Elder, and Morton, and one of those guys, like you said, is on the IL. So for Morton, he is technically eligible to come back during the divisional series. The roster is due the day before Game 1, and he's not eligible to be activated off the IL until the day of Game 2. So he can't join the roster unless there is some sort of injury, and he's an injury replacement. But the team doesn't think he'll be ready for that anyway. And so the target that they have, the best case scenario, optimistic target they have, is for Charlie Morton to be healthy enough and able to pitch where they can put him onto the NLCS roster if Atlanta were to advance. So assuming Max Fried is back, because it's a blister, it's not a bigger issue, and they have some experience dealing with these. Assuming he's back, you have Fried, Strider, and Elder are your 3 starters, and you can really get by with just 3 starters in the NLDS because of the off days and the fact you only play max 5 games. But it's the NLCS where you need to have Morton available because you're going to need four starters in that series. That's where he comes into play. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. Obviously, for Morton, this is it's not a blister. This is something inside of his finger, and we'll see how he responds to treatment. And we probably won't know for sure if he's able to pitch or not in the NLCS until they release that roster.
Your thoughts on Kyle Wright coming in? I know he gave up a run, but other than that, the fact that they only threw two pitchers in that game, was it game 2 of that series with game Washington, 2. And he put in a lot of innings, and honestly, he looked pretty solid. He looked more comfortable out there than he did the first couple of times.
The thing that made me feel good about that outing for Kyle Wright was it was only 31 pitches. Like, he went through 3 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 2 strikeouts, no walks on 31 pitches. So he was finding the zone and he was efficient. And though that's 2 things that we haven't seen from him really all season. We haven't seen him have the control and the command. We haven't seen him be efficient. We've seen him run up high pitch counts. We've seen him struggle. And so they are fully into Kyle Wright does not have time to stretch back out into a full-time starting job. But I feel comfortable that given what we saw against the Nationals on Sunday, that he can, provided nothing changes between now and the end of the season, he should be able to contribute for you with meaningful innings out of the bullpen in the postseason. Now, I still think he's probably going to be one of the guys that you go to if you have a lead of more than a couple runs and you're trying to avoid using your top guys. I still feel like he's going to be that guy versus somebody you're going to go to, in a 1-run game in the 8th. But he did look a lot better than he's looked at any other time we've seen him this season. So that's good news on the pitching front for Atlanta.
Staying with the pitching, as you look at Strider, he's probably going to break John Smoltz's record. He's going to get another start before the end of the season, unless he just has one of those weird outings like he had earlier in the season where he gets ousted in the first or gives up a bunch of hits and a bunch of runs in the third before he gets any of his strikeouts. I mean, I think he has 3 to tie, 4 to break, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's when he left the game the other night. And that must have been a complete pitch count type deal the other night whenever they pulled him, because he was in no danger really of losing anything, and he gave up that hit, and Snit came out of the dugout to grab him. So it was like, okay, so he hit his number, and they were going to give him a chance to strike a couple of guys out, get closer to the record. He gave up the hit. They were like, all right, you're done. And so I would not be worried about that. I saw some people online. They were posting concerns about that. And I thought, why would they do that so close to the record? Well, we're also bigger picture here. He's going to get it. He's getting another start. He should get it. If he doesn't, he's got nobody but himself to blame, because that means he's had a really bad outing if he does that. And number 2, playoffs are here, folks. You gotta be able to manage your guys right now. And this is one thing that Snit has, in my opinion, done a good job of, in platooning players to save them for the playoffs, especially the year that they won the World Series, because you had to figure out a way to fill that void in the lineup with Ronnie that year. That was probably the best coaching job ever out of Snit.
Yeah, that outing by Strider was, I think, the first time all year that he went into the 6th inning and had less than 6 strikeouts. Like, it was just a fluky thing, just didn't happen to work out. Like you said, he'll get another outing this weekend. It'll also be at home, so he'll get to break the record at home versus on the road. I'm not worried at all there. Do want to clarify something for people who are wondering. It's not the franchise record. This is the Atlanta Braves strikeout record. This is the modern strikeout record. As always, just about every actual franchise record belongs to a Boston Beaneater. This one was 1884 when Charles Buffington pitched 587 innings and had 417 strikeouts. Nobody is touching that. He went 48 and 16 in his 67 starts. Yeah, I mean that's a career for some guys. But Strider's going to be perfectly fine, and him starting over the weekend will set him up to have probably an extra, I believe it will work out to an extra 2 days of rest before he takes the ball. I would assume for game 2 of whatever NLDS matchup it is. He may pitch game 1 depending on the matchups. I'm not sure. But either way, he'll get one more outing. He'll get the record. No worries.
And keep in mind, if you watch the game, the Strider game out there, Braves fans, you heard Godin talk about it as well as Frenchie, that the Nationals are not a team that strikes out a lot. They put the ball in play. So it literally, he picked probably one of the worst teams to go up against to try to get his strikeout record because they just put the bat on the ball most times, and nothing hard, nothing fancy. They just got a bunch of guys that are slappers, and as Frenchie said, they adjust against Strider because they know if they can just touch the fastball, it's going to go somewhere. So that's all they were trying to do was place base hits, and so I thought he did a fine job. There were a lot of people that are all worried about him getting in the season. Is he losing his? No, he was still throwing 99. He's not lost his arm, and they've done a good job, like you just said, of getting him out of there by the 5th or 6th inning, and him still having, not as many strikeouts as he wanted, but also limited damage as well. So I do look forward to that. Well, that's the thing, is home sweet home. You mentioned it. The Braves have to be happy to end the season with 2 series in a row, Cubbies and Nationals at home.
Yeah, and it's there could be worse matchups, right? There are teams that have to play a bunch of playoff teams to end the season. There could be worse teams to play. Chicago obviously is right in there in that National League wild card. They are throwing their studs. They are throwing Justin Steele. They are throwing Jameson Taillon. They are throwing Marcus Stroman because they have to get these wins. Atlanta has Bryce Elder and 2 TBDs because it would have been it would have been somebody else. And so we don't necessarily know who's going to start on Tuesday and Wednesday. Atlanta's probably going to make some transactions. You don't have to worry about the time deadline on optioning somebody down from this point on, simply because, for a starter, simply because the season will end next Sunday. So you can option a guy, you can let a guy start Tuesday, option him back to the minors, and then he's still eligible for the postseason roster. No concerns there. But you'll probably see 2 different starters from the minors. Their season is over. You'll probably see some guys called up to start Tuesday and Wednesday, unless Atlanta wants to risk trying a bullpen game for one of those so close to the postseason. It really doesn't feel like they're going to want to do that.
Lindsay, do we get to see a guy that played in college this year also pitch in the majors this year?
You are not going to see Hurston Waldrep in the postseason, at least. The Braves, kind of speaking on background to Justin Toscano of the AJC, they have said that Hurston Waldrep's season is done. He only got the start in AAA because AA season was over. They wanted to get one more start for him to kind of, let him finish the last couple things he had been working on. His season started in February. So he threw 101 innings for Florida. They went all the way through late June, College World Series. Atlanta got him. They kept him under 30 innings. He started 8 times, so he never really went deep into games. And they never let him go over 65 pitches until that very last outing against Gwinnett. So they have shut him down. He is done. But I imagine next season, there's a possibility you see Hurston Waldrep sooner rather than later, simply because of how polished he is already. But from everything we've been told, he's not an option for a start this week or this postseason.
Dang it. I was really hoping we'd see. When I saw all the TBDs, I was sitting there licking my chops, and I was going, all right, here's our chance. We get to see one of those history-making things where a guy was pitching in the College World Series, and he's going to be pitching in the, at the end of the season he's going to make his major league debut. Now you've made it sore for me going into the upcoming series, because I was really looking for it. When I saw the TBDs had still not been filled before we started doing the pod, I was like, okay, there's still a chance. But now that you said that you've talked to folks behind the scenes, looks like my hopes and dreams have been smashed. Sorry, Hurston. I guess we'll see you next year, bud.
We'll see you next year, buddy.
Exactly. So that's all right. I think as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to have a great career. You and I following a lot of SEC baseball, we got to hear his name quite a bit throughout the year and throughout the season. And so I think Braves fans are in for a treat that may not follow collegiate baseball and may not know who we're talking about. I mean, they know who we drafted, but they probably have not seen him throw. He is very impressive. There's a couple of times where Lindsay attended some of his games. I attended, one of the games as well. And I will say that when you get to look out there and you see possibly the number 1, number 2, and number 3 picks in the draft all play in baseball games, you're like, whoa, this is impressive. So, and they've lived up to the bill.
in the conversations leading into the draft, there was debate about the two best individual pitches in the draft. Was it Paul Skeens' fastball, the guy who went obviously number 1 overall? Was it his slider, or was it Hurston Waldrep's splitter? So like that's kind of caliber of talent that Atlanta got. It's not a player that's commonly available when you pick in the 20s, but Atlanta kind of worked it out. They got him, and he's looked as good as advertised so far in his minor league career.
I think he was a steal for the Braves. I'm shocked that he fell that low in the draft after, as you said, you've seen him throw. I've seen him throw against some very good hitters, and he dominated the collegiate ranks. So he's Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor. It is going to be Cubs. It is going to be Washington Nats. We're going to wrap up the season. We get 100 wins. Go to Braves Today, bravestoday.com. Follow us on the Twitter at Braves_today. Lindsay, as always, thank you, bud.